What if one of the most mysterious ancient texts connected to the Bible contains stories that do not perfectly match the scripture we know today? What if a book quoted inside the Bible itself, called the Book of Jasher, preserved traditions, details, and interpretations that seem to expand, alter, or contradict the accounts found in the canon? Today, in this educational exploration, we will take a careful, neutral, and historically grounded look at several passages from the Book of Jasher that differ from the biblical narrative. Our goal is not to challenge belief or declare any book right or wrong, but to understand how ancient writings developed, how oral traditions evolved, and how the world of Scripture was far more diverse than many people realize. The Book of Jasher, also known as Sefer HaYashar, meaning the Book of the Upright, is referenced twice in the Bible, in Joshua 10:13 and in 2 Samuel 1:18. Its existence is not disputed. What is debated is whether the versions we have today reflect the ancient original. Most scholars agree that the existing Book of Jasher is a medieval or later reconstruction based on earlier Jewish traditions. Yet despite this, it preserves stories and expansions that mirror ancient oral narratives, giving us a glimpse into how early communities may have understood their own history. One of the most frequently discussed differences appears in the story of Noah and the flood. In the canonical Bible, Genesis describes Noah as a righteous man chosen by God to build the ark, save his family, and preserve life on earth. The details are clear, concise, and theological. But the Book of Jasher expands the narrative significantly. It describes Noah pleading with the people for 120 years, begging them to turn from wickedness. It gives elaborate descriptions of the corruption of humanity, including people stealing wives and even mixing the species of animals, an idea not found in Genesis. In some versions of Jasher, the text even suggests that the animals themselves became corrupted, which is a theme echoed in some ancient Jewish mystic literature. These details create a world far more chaotic than the one described in Genesis. They do not necessarily contradict Scripture, but they add layers that shift the tone and complexity of the story. Another widely discussed difference involves the birth and early life of Moses. In Exodus, Moses is born during a time of danger, hidden in a basket, and raised by Pharaoh's daughter. The biblical narrative is simple and direct, but in the Book of Jasher, Moses' birth is portrayed with supernatural elements. The text says Moses was born radiant, that his appearance frightened the Egyptians, and that people believed he was destined for greatness from the moment he entered the world. Jasher also adds details about Moses' youth in Egypt, including military campaigns, a romance with the Ethiopian queen, and political drama resembling historical legends. These expansions do not match the biblical account, but they reflect ancient traditions that circulated orally long before being written down. Many of these stories parallel the writings of Josephus and other early historians, showing how widespread these legends once were. A more controversial difference arises in the story of Abraham's confrontation with Nimrod. In Genesis, Nimrod is mentioned only briefly as a mighty hunter before the Lord and the founder of several cities. But in the Book of Jasher, Nimrod becomes a central antagonist, a king who tries to kill Abraham at birth, a tyrant who rules the world, and a figure who practices astrology and sorcery. The text describes Abraham smashing his father's idols, debating with Nimrod, and even surviving being thrown into a fiery furnace, an event not found in Genesis but preserved in Jewish midrash and the Quranic tradition. This story dramatically reshapes the image of Abraham's early life. To many readers, it feels like a contradiction. To scholars, it shows how ancient communities filled gaps through storytelling. Another notable difference appears in the story of Esau and Jacob. In Genesis, Esau sells his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of stew, a simple exchange that reveals his impulsive nature. But in the Book of Jasher, the story becomes intense and violent. Jasher claims that Esau had just killed King Nimrod in the field, stole his royal garments, and came home exhausted and terrified. According to this tradition, Esau sold his birthright not because he was casually hungry, but because he feared for his life and wanted the spiritual protection that Jacob could offer. This changes the emotional weight of the story. It does not necessarily contradict Genesis, but it reframes the characters, giving deeper motives that are absent from Scripture. The Book of Jasher also modifies the story of Joseph and his brothers. While Genesis tells us the brothers sold Joseph into slavery, the Book of Jasher presents a more complex series of events. It claims that Joseph was initially thrown into the pit for 3 days, that the brothers debated killing him several times, and that Midianite traders, not Ishmaelites, ultimately pulled him out. Meanwhile, the Ishmaelites later bought Joseph from the Midianites. This creates a layered account that blends different textual traditions. Some scholars note that this helps explain the apparent discrepancy in Genesis itself, where the text sometimes mentions Midianites and sometimes Ishmaelites. Whether it corrects or complicates the story depends on the perspective of the reader, but it undeniably diverges from the simplicity of the biblical account. The Book of Jasher also expands the Tower of Babel narrative. While Genesis briefly mentions humanity's attempt to build a tower to the heavens, Jasher gives detailed descriptions of the people's motives, their engineering, their fear of another flood, and even the different punishments they received. In Jasher, some people became apes, others had their language confused, and some died instantly by divine fire. These details do not appear in Genesis, but similar themes are found in Talmudic literature. This suggests that Jasher preserves folkloric traditions once widely known in Jewish communities, even if they never became part of the biblical canon. One of the most striking expansions involves the story of the sun standing still in Joshua's battle. In the Bible, the miracle is described briefly and powerfully, but in Jasher, the narrative becomes larger and more dramatic. The text claims the sun and moon paused for an entire day as a sign to the nations that God was fighting for Israel. It also mentions wars and events not found in Joshua. This adds mythic grandeur to the account, an example of how tradition often grows beyond its original biblical form. So the question arises, do these differences mean the Book of Jasher contradicts the Bible? The answer depends on perspective. From a historical viewpoint, Jasher represents an alternative tradition, a collection of legends, expansions, and interpretations that were never meant to replace Scripture. From a literary viewpoint, it reflects the nature of ancient storytelling, where stories grew, evolved, and adapted to cultural changes. From a theological viewpoint, interpretations differ depending on faith tradition. Some see these differences as contradictions. Others see them as complementary expansions. Scholars see them as evidence of the diversity of ancient Jewish narratives. It is important to remember that ancient texts were not always created to compete with Scripture. Many were educational, moral, or historical in purpose. The Book of Jasher appears to be a work that blended history, poetry, midrash, and oral tradition into a single narrative. Whether accurate or not, its value lies not in replacing the Bible, but in helping modern readers understand how ancient people viewed their past. As we explore these differences, let us remain neutral, respectful, and curious. These ancient writings give us insight into the human imagination, the development of religious identity, and the storytelling traditions that shaped entire civilizations. They remind us that the biblical world was not a silent world. It was a world filled with voices, some preserved in Scripture, others echoing through lost and forgotten texts. The Book of Jasher invites us to consider not just what was written, but what was remembered, imagined, debated, and passed down through centuries of cultural memory. Whether it contradicts or complements the Bible is not the purpose of this study. The purpose is understanding, to see the richness of ancient tradition, and to appreciate how the Bible emerged from a world far more complex than most people realize. If this exploration has opened your mind to the depth of ancient writings, then stay with us. There are countless lost books, forgotten scrolls, and hidden histories waiting to be discovered. Subscribe to Lost Books Archive, turn on notifications, and join us every week as we travel deeper into the world behind Scripture.